Welcome back to the Art of Adventure podcast. This is episode 137. This is a solo round full of stories about living in Bali. I'm your host, lead explorer and guide Derek Loudermilk. You can head over to derekloudermilk.com to check out the show notes for this episode and all other episodes, and to sign up for the Art of Adventure newsletter where you'll get the latest episode articles, updates, and reading recommendations. I want to thank my patrons over on patreon.com for supporting this podcast and making the show possible. To donate and support the show, you can go to patreon.com/Derek Loudermilk. One big thing that came out of Bali is Adventure Quest, and that is, I consider it to be a rite of passage. So I'm hosting Adventure Quest in Bali in September of this year, September 2016, and we're going to go around to some of the secret canyons and waterfalls and volcanoes and rainforests of Bali to spend time in nature, to take a break from our crazy lives and really get to know ourselves. You'll be in a small group with just 5 people. And so I'll take you to all these secret parts around Bali, and we'll do fasting, day of silence. We'll do some good ceremonies. We'll overnight on top of a volcano. We'll do some canyoning, all kinds of really life-changing experiences. And the whole point is to set ourselves up for dramatic realization so that we can move like the Native American Vision Quest, so that we can move from who we used to be into who we will become. So if you're interested in that, head over to derekloudermilk.com/adventurequest and sign up. All right, today on the podcast, the episode is all about my time in Bali, and I've just repatriated back to the States. So most of you that have been listening to The Art of Adventure, most of the episodes were recorded in Bali. I started the show just before I moved there, and it's been a couple years, and now I'm going to be spending 6 or 9 months back here in the United States. And so I thought I'd do an episode, a solo round, telling some of the most remarkable experiences that I had while I was in Bali. And clearly I was there for 2 years, so there's going to be a lot of things. So I might not get to them all. I want to keep this episode inside the normal solo round length of 15 minutes. So let's see. One of the more permanent things that I left with was a tattoo, a free tattoo of the Fibonacci sequence. And Tattoo Taco Tuesdays, you go to this place down in Canggu, which is a beachside surf town. And if you get there early enough and buy a taco, you get a free tattoo, but you only get 20 minutes, or it has to be smaller than the size of your palm. So I got there and made sure I sit right next to the chalkboard where you sign up. And I was number 3 or something on the list, and I got my tattoo, and everyone asks about it. And it's just kind of a crazy thing to be able to say, yeah, I got this tattoo for free because I bought a taco. And then it makes everyone else want to go there as well. One big thing, I always say that living in Ubud, which is the town where I was based for a couple of years, was a lot like college, because there's a very small, maybe 1,000 strong expat community there. And I ran into these people on the street, at restaurants, at events, pretty much, every day, multiple times a day. And so it's much more personal contact than you get in normal city living. As such, I was building lots of relationships really fast, and I was also learning lots of things. And so from taking voice lessons to improve my speaking and singing ability, to learning to dancing multiple times a week. There's a really amazing dancing community in this town of Ubud, to starting the Frisbee game. I never played Ultimate Frisbee, and Nick Wood, who is my housemate, he runs the podcast Life Athletics. We were sitting down one day and we said, we want to spend time with men. We want like a men's group or something. And then there was another conversation going on that was sort of like, we want to have more fun in life. We just want to, we're so focused on our work. We want to let loose and have fun. And so we decided to combine having fun with the men's group and play Ultimate Frisbee. And that grew into, a multi times a week playing pickup Frisbee. And we did an international tournament, and I learned all kinds of things about this new sport and strategy and all that stuff. So there's just a ton of things to learn there. Also, let's talk about on the more yoga hippie side of things. There's a lot to learn there. I met one of the men who I consider to be a great mentor of mine, Les Leventhal. He's been on the podcast before, and he is sort of a world-renowned yoga teacher with quite a past. He's been a drug addict, he's been a prostitute, he's been all kinds of things, and then he totally turned his life around, and now he's my favorite yoga teacher. So I would take weekly yoga classes with him. I lived just a couple blocks from the yoga studio where he taught, and it was great, and he would be one of the people that I would chat with before his yoga class. So I got a little bit of sort of personal time with him each week, which was really amazing. And there's all kinds of other, I don't know, hippie or woo-woo things. That's what I'm going to call them. Spiritual things that I was learning while I was there, like doing a cacao ceremony or learning breath work, which is just a way of breathing really fully, or learning kirtan, which is sort of a chanting type of singing that I think originates in India. Anyway, so there's all those things to learn around the spiritual side of things, the yoga side of things. Another big part of my life there was co-working, and the community that I found when I first moved there at the co-working space was really amazing. It's the space is called Hubud, Hub in Ubud. And any given day, there's maybe 50 entrepreneurs working from this bamboo structure co-working space. And you can go and get some work done. But really, I found that it was the best for just meeting people. And so when I moved there, I was able to drop into this entrepreneurial community and meet really great people for collaboration, for interviewing on the art of adventure, or just to be friends with or get advice from. And, that was another great source of meeting people. So I was meeting people through organizing this Frisbee game. I was meeting people at co-working spaces. And then I finally decided to actually start speaking at co-working spaces, and I was teaching people about podcasting. I was teaching people about charisma. I was teaching people about relationship building. And, there would be an audience of, 30 people. And it's always a really great opportunity. Anytime I think you get up in front of a room, people get to spend an hour learning about who you are and how you talk. And it's great. So I was also meeting a lot of friends and learning a lot about, you have to learn things to be able to give talks. And then I was learning about the process of being a speaker and how to engage people. So that was really fun. A lot of people know Bali as the island of the gods, or the island of love. And it's a Hindu island in a Muslim country, in an Islamic country. And it's pretty unique in that sense. And so there's ceremonies every day. Every meal, there's a ceremony. There's wedding ceremonies. There's funeral ceremonies. There's ceremonies to dedicate a new building project. There's always people marching up and down the street in bright colored clothes and chanting. And, it's kind of crazy. I think they spend half of their income on ceremonies across the island. But the best and biggest one that I saw was when the king of Bali died. And they had it's almost like a Mardi Gras float, but it's this huge structure, maybe, 100 feet tall, carried by 200 men on their shoulders. And the king's casket goes at the very top. It's kind of like a fancy pyramid. And then they burn the whole thing. And it's just a massive, huge ceremony. And the king hadn't died for a long time. Well, I mean, he lived his whole life, but it had been a long time since a ceremony this big had happened. And so there were foreign dignitaries there. The president of Indonesia was there. It was important people from all over the region, all over Asia had come and spent the afternoon photographing this ceremony. And it was really, really something. Life wasn't always rosy. There's a lot of, people get into scooter accidents, people get dengue fever. Luckily, I avoided both of those things. But early on in my stay there, I was out running and I was attacked and bitten by a rabid dog, and I had to get rabies shots. So that was the first sort of welcome I got to Bali. Another crazy experience I had was somehow I got a flesh-eating fungus. It could be from a swimming pool or God knows where, but I thought it was good. It was like on the inside of my thigh, kind of place where you can hide if you're wearing pants. But this kind of fungus travels through your bloodstream. And then I had flesh-eating fungus on my face, and I was having to put makeup on. And, it's tropical. I didn't have air conditioning, and it was just the worst. It was the worst. So it's not it's not always rosy living in Bali, of course. But those are really two of the biggest mishaps that I had. Let's talk about some of the adventures that I went on. At the end of 2015, I went on a Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls secret mission where I found the hidden waterfalls of Bali. That was pretty amazing. I found some secret canyons and hiked a lot of the mountains, including Mount Batukaru, which is where Adventure Quest will be partly held. The central highlands of Bali were definitely cooler, more rainforesty, crater lakes. That's my favorite place to be in Bali for sure. With my good friend Martin, it was his idea. He had set a previous record of climbing Bali's 3 volcanoes, Agung, Batur, and Abang, back to back to back in something like 18 and a half hours. And he was going to break that record and set a new world record of 15 hours. And so we put together a team of friends and crushed the record 14 hours and 43 minutes to climb. I think the total is 6,000 feet of volcanoes, and then there's driving time in between. It was a big feat, and I'm really happy that I did that. Another real treat was one of my childhood friends was living in Singapore at the time, and he would come over to Bali from time to time to get away from Singapore and spend time in the outdoors. And whenever he was coming, he would let me know, and I'd go down to the coast for a surf. And I learned to surf with him, and I also learned to stand up paddleboard surf with him. And that's a huge part of Bali that I largely left unexplored, which is the surfing culture. And that's, I think in the 60s is when the Australian surfers started coming up, because there's this really long stretch of beach where the break is just goes forever. And, the Indian Ocean brings a swell for thousands of miles uninterrupted until it hits the shores of Bali. And so all the southern beaches in the southern coast and Uluwatu and the caves is a great place for surfing. And it's totally separate from where I was living in the central highlands, which is where all the yoga and spiritual practices and most of the entrepreneurs are. The 2 best scuba dives that I've done are in Bali. There's a wreck dive, which is the first time I got to experience something similar to cave diving through an enclosed space, essentially diving through the interior of a ship. But my favorite all-time dive was a drift dive off a sea cliff. There's a national park in northwest Bali. I can't even remember the name now, but you take this boat out to this island, and there's a sea cliff. It's essentially, from the beach, there's a reef, and then the reef drops off into a deep, deep chasm. It goes down, 1,000 feet, just drops away and out of vision. And what you do is you swim down, maybe 50 feet down, and then you just sort of face the wall, and there's a very slow current that will take you sideways along the wall. And so you don't even have to swim. You can just sort of hover there and slowly move sideways as the current takes you and see all these amazing things, all these corals on the side of this cliff. And if you look behind you, you'll see giant fish like sharks and sunfish and eels and all kinds of spooky things. And so it's actually better to look straight ahead at the wall of coral. But it's just really amazing. And the fact that you can just sort of observe it and drift along without putting any effort in was really magical for me. The natural world of Bali is pretty amazing. And one of the craziest experiences that I have had in my life is, I call it the story of the magic tree. And I've told it on here before, I think. And there's a video on YouTube you can find standing in front of a giant tree that's not the magic tree. It looks like the magic tree. But the magic tree is up in the rainforest near Bedugul in central Bali. And it's at the edge of the botanical garden where it just turns wild again and goes to the rainforest. And I think it's about 800 years old. Anyway, this magic tree spoke to me over the course of 15 to 20 really emotional minutes. And the outcome of the story was that it gave me a mission. And my mission is to take people. Well, first of all, I was reprimanded by the tree, which is kind of embarrassing. I hadn't been spending enough time in the wilderness. I grew up in the woods. I loved it, Boy Scouts, hiking in Missouri growing up. But I wasn't spending much time in the last decade out in the woods. And so the tree said, first of all, you need to spend more time in the woods. Second of all, you need to bring people with you and help them reconnect with nature and let nature guide them and remind them of that part of their humanity, that we are biological beings, and so that they can go back to their jobs, their lives, their families, and careers recharged and with more understanding because they've been out in the wilderness. And that's where Adventure Quest was born. And luckily enough, that's what also listeners of the show, people like you, were asking for. And so that's why I'm putting on Adventure Quest in September. Okay, I've gotten to a lot of the stories. Oh, one that I didn't mention yet. I went back to doing improv comedy for the first time since college, and we did some shows and got paid as a comedian for the first time ever, which was super cool. And the comedy training really helped with my speaking at the co-working spaces. The last thing that I want to talk about is just my sort of wild relationship status. I arrived in Bali married, went through separation and divorce while I was there, living the life of a bachelor for about a year, which was amazing, meeting interesting, confident, beautiful women from around the world, getting to hang out with all sorts of a diverse amount of women, which I really never done since I'd been in long-term relationships my whole adult life. And finally, the reason why I'm moving back to the United States is to have a kid. The woman that I'm dating, Heidi, is pregnant, and it's been a whirlwind from, in just under 2 years from being married to single to now I'm going to be a father. And that sort of precipitated us leaving Bali to have our kid back in the United States. It's so typical. I'm going to say it's typical. It doesn't happen all the time. But people say that when you're ready for something in Bali, the island will give it to you. And because of all the things I've learned and the people I've met and the activities I've done and the deep self-reflection that I've been able to do through yoga and meditation and various ceremonies, all the hard stuff, basically, I think has left me prepared to be a father. And now the island is like saying, go forth into the rest of the world and be a father now. And I see my time in Bali like a university, like a time period in life, 2 years, where I had to go and learn some very specific things in order to step into the next phase of my life. That's all the stories I'm going to share with you for today. Hopefully Bali Tourism is happy about that, because that was essentially just one long advertisement for living in Bali. Or maybe you don't want to get bit by a rabid dog. I don't know. It's up to you. Thanks so much for joining me today. Now it's your turn to go out there and be adventurous, and then tell some stories about it. See you next time.